It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferenc Toth. In an era of chaos, confusion, and craziness, Ferenc is a voice for common sense. As a financial literacy educator, speaker, and entrepreneur, Ferenc cuts through the noise to help us understand how current events affect our money, economy, and our freedom. Now, here's Ferenc Toth.
Welcome to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ferenc. Well, today I get to discuss a new product, or at least it's a new product for most people. We don't get to do that real often because in the guaranteed fixed index or fixed industry, there's not a lot of changes. They don't happen quickly. It's pretty consistent, steady Eddie, boring, if you will. But then again, that's the strength of the fixed income, fixed financial arena. Things don't change quickly and they move along on a slow pace. But there is a new product out there. It's called a QLAC. And this is something that, again, most people have never heard of. Now, first I'm going to say is, what is a QLAC? A QLAC is a qualified longevity annuity contract. Now, why would this be of importance or interest? Well, this is something that's different than any other annuity that people are familiar with. In fact, this is designed to reduce your overall tax liability through reducing your required minimum distributions. In other words, who should be interested in looking into a QLAC? Anyone with a significant IRA or 401k is a candidate for a QLAC. In other words, if you have a significant amount of money in an IRA or 401k and you are nearing retirement or are already retired, you should consider looking at a QLAC, because what it can do is reduce the total amount of required minimum distributions that you have to take each year. Now, why is that such a big deal? I can tell you, I work with a lot of clients who have significant IRA 401ks, and when they turn age 72, after that they have to start taking a certain amount of money from their IRA or 401k. It's called a required minimum distribution, or RMD for short. And the problem that many folks run into is the amount of money that they're required to take out of that account. Of course, now it's subject to tax. Oftentimes is more than they need, or becomes, how should I say, more than they want to take out, because of the amount of taxes that are going to be incurred as a result of that distribution. So I get a lot of clients, again, folks with anyone with a significant IRA or 401k who are retired, and now they're complaining about the amount of taxes they're paying. Now understand, the IRA or 401k, the monies that they put into that account and allowed to grow over time did allow them to defer those taxes. So in other words, they didn't have to pay any income tax on the money when they contributed to it. It was allowed to grow, tax deferred. In other words, no taxes were paid year to year, which oftentimes allowed more of the money to grow, which allowed that IRA 401k to grow bigger and bigger over time in many cases. All that's good, but then when it comes to the distribution time, the time when you want or need to take the money out, then oftentimes these IRAs and 401ks, over the last decade or two or three or more even, have grown to values that, well, and many times far exceed what people anticipated or thought they might be, really. And so the amount of taxes they end up having to pay as a result can be quite excessive. So a QLAC can be a solution to that. So if you're that person, again, with a decent amount of IRA or 401ks monies, and you're in retirement or looking at or going into retirement, let's say, in the relatively near future, this is something you can really look at and really should consider. Let's just put it this way. Anybody 50 plus, probably with a significant IRA, should consider a QLAC as part of their planning tools, as a tool that could be used, again, to reduce the overall income tax they have to pay each year. Now, I want to go into a few details about this. I'm going to cover some things, so encourage you to check this out further. If you want more information, contact me at yourpersonalbank.com, and I'll be happy to send you some additional information on QLAC so you can look into this further. And of course, if you want to discuss it with me, I'll send you my calendar link and we can go into more detail But a few things about the QLACs I think you'll find interesting is there are what's the limits to how much you can put into a QLAC. First of all, that one's pretty simple. Actually, before I get there even, I should say the reason why most people have not heard about these is it's a relatively new product. In fact, the IRS, through the Treasury Department, created the QLAC in July of 2014. So again, it's not a product, it's been around for a few years, but again, it's not something that's been around for a long time. So most people are just not aware of it. They're not aware that they can even do this and reduce their required minimum distributions and therefore reduce their amount of overall tax that they have to pay year to year. So first thing, a few of the limits and things that some of the rules that go with the QLAC. First of all, premiums are limited to $200,000. So notice the maximum amount you can put into one of these is $200,000 or 25% of your total IRA and 401k monies combined total, whichever is less or whichever number is lower. Okay, so you're not going to be able to put more than 25% of your total IRA or 401k into a QLAC. Again, it's a good diversification strategy, and the purpose behind it is to offload the risk. It's to create a situation where you're guaranteeing, you're guaranteeing against living too long, if you know what I'm saying, that longevity risk. You're offloading that risk from you to the insurance company. Now, age-wise, who can purchase these? Well, the maximum age a person can purchase one of these is 83. So there is no minimum. So you can purchase one of these up to age 83, just so you know. If you're older than that, sorry, out of luck on the QLAC. But anybody 83 or younger can absolutely do so. Payout options. See, annuities, what their strength is creating a guaranteed lifetime payment. And they are based on single or joint life only. Typically for an individual or a couple is what they're designed for. They also can have annual payment increases. You can get anywhere from 1 to 5% simple annual interest increases, or compounded or flat dollar increases are available each year. So you can set one of these up not only to eliminate longevity risk and guarantee a lifetime income, guaranteed lifetime income, but you also can have it increase to offset inflation and things like that. So that actually is very interesting. The other thing that's important to understand about QLACs versus traditional annuities or guaranteed lifetime income annuities is the amount of income that can come off of these is significantly higher than a typical traditional annuity or guaranteed lifetime income annuity. So you can receive a whole lot more money because of the deferral options. But the biggest strength, here's the key, the biggest strength to a QLAC, a qualified longevity annuity, is this. The money that's allocated, that you allocate to this account, will reduce your overall RMD requirement. So in other words, let me use a simple example. Let's say you had $1 million IRA, 401k, or combined IRA and 401ks. Most people understand once you hit age 72 that you have to start taking a certain amount out of that account each year. It's called a required minimum distribution. And the IRS requires you to do that. Of course, you have to pay tax on that amount you take out, on that distribution. To put $200,000, which is the maximum, into a QLAC, your total IRA for RMD calculation purposes would be now $800,000. You would reduce your required minimum distribution by 20%. Therefore, you would actually reduce your total tax liability on that RMD, that required minimum distribution, by 20%. So if you're looking for, if you don't have a need for all that income, let's say initially or at this point or whatever, and you want to defer some of that tax further, you can do that through a QLAC. You can reduce the distribution, therefore reducing your total tax liability. And also at the same time, the QLAC can then create later in life a guaranteed lifetime income for you, okay, that you can live on or supplement your retirement no matter how long you live. That is the strength. That is the strength and the purpose of a QLAC, okay? Like I said, they do provide significantly more income for life than a typical annuity, and they have a special tax benefit. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people look into these. When I share this with a client who this situation makes sense for them, and this isn't for everyone, certainly, but again, anyone with a significant IRA or 401k, it could make sense for. By reducing the size of the required total distribution that you have to take start at age 72, again, it reduces the taxes that you that are owed, that you have to pay each year. So again, for some folks, this is going to be of great interest. If you want more information on it, I'm just going to say again, contact me at yourpersonalbank.com, and I'll be happy to send you some additional information on this. You can also go to our website where there's going to be some information there, FAQs, frequently asked questions about QLACs. Okay, again, it's a specialty type of thing, but it's very interesting for the right type of person. Now, before we run out of time, I want to share a couple of limitations, okay, with the QLACs. One of them is, or why people, I should say this, what I should say, people who don't look into this is, or the mistakes that people make often, I should say, is people do tend to underestimate their lifespan when planning for the future. This is just statistically true. We see this with life insurance, with estate planning, with retirement planning. It's a constant. Study after study after study shows that people tend to really do underestimate how long they're going to live. The QLAC can help offset that. Other retirees, a mistake that's often made, and this is shared by many studies, is some retirees assume they can do better investing the money on their own. The point of the QLAC is you're actually transferring the market risk to the insurer, at least this portion of your portfolio. Like I said, up to 200,000 or 25%, which is less. The security of that fixed income backstop actually lets you invest your other assets more aggressively. And that's an important point. So if you do want to take on a little more risk, or it's a good idea to set some of the money aside, like in this, in a guaranteed lifetime income or a QLAC if that's appropriate, so that you can indeed then take on more risk on the rest of the money. And if things don't work out so well, that's okay. You still have that guaranteed income for life coming in. That's the key strength, like I said, of any annuity, guaranteed income, I should say annuity. But the QLAC, again, has that special tax benefit of reducing your required minimum distributions, or RMDs, which can reduce your overall tax liability year to year for quite a number of years. Again, last I'll share with this, and I'll go on to some other topics on today, but I wanted is contact me at yourpersonalbank.com if you're interested in more information. I'll send you some info on it. You can go to our website, again, yourpersonalbank.com. There'll be some information on QLACs if you have an interest. Again, it's an area of specialty. Not many people are familiar with it. It's a relatively new financial tool, but can be very, very beneficial for that person who has a significant IRA or 401k. I like to share these things as they come out because, again, it's one of those things where most people are not very familiar with. I specialize in these types of things, and so it does help to share that when they do come out, when they do become available. I'm going to encourage you to stay tuned in the next segment. I'm going to talk about some other things that I think should be of concern for a lot of people. So this is going to be interesting. It's talking about the IRS, so don't miss this.
Stay tuned for more common sense from Ference. For more information, contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth. Want more information? Contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Now back to the show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ference, and if you missed the previous segment, I was talking about qualified longevity annuities, or QLACs. If you missed it, I'm really going to encourage you to go to yourpersonalbank.com. You can listen to this or any of the previously recorded shows. There'll be some additional information on QLACs. Again, it's a relatively new product. Anyone with a significant IRA or 401k who's looking at reducing their required minimum distributions and therefore their overall taxes, that's someone who really should take a look at a QLAC, because this could really help you reduce your income taxes. And look, anytime, if you've listened to the show, you know if there's any legal way to reduce taxes, man, I'm all for it, because one of the comments, one of the complaints, I guess I should say, that I hear probably more often than any other these days, has to do with taxes. In other words, we're seeing a lot of folks that are just getting really tired of paying their taxes. And more importantly, it's not so much that they're tired of paying the taxes. What they're frustrated about is where they're seeing where the money is going. Their hard-earned dollars going to fraud and waste and things that they just do not agree with or diametrically opposed to, yet being forced to put into the system and make that and have that money spent in things that they just do not adamantly believe in. And that's incredibly disheartening. It's frustrating. I get it. I feel that way oftentimes myself. And, it really, how should I say, it's really strikes home, I should say, with this country and really when the very foundations of this country. Because if you think about it, you remember your history and you remember the stamp tax and the Tea Party, the Boston Tea Party, where they were protesting taxes on tea and no taxation without representation. I mean, think about it. Those are the very foundational principles that this country started upon and led to the Revolutionary War and led to creating a new country, breaking away from Britain and the king, because the citizens of this country were tired of paying taxes that they felt were they were right. It was not right. It wasn't fair. And there's a lot of that going on today, a lot of that same feeling with an awful lot of people, because it's just not right. It's not fair. I mean, forget the point of where the money's going. It's just the pure waste and fraud alone is aggravating. If we lived our lives, whether it was our personal expense finances or our business or anything else like that, we wouldn't last very long. We would be financially destitute. We'd get cut off. You know what I'm saying? Spending money, like I've often said, like a drunken sailor. Yet our government has pursued a spending program like a whole, it's an insult to drunken sailors. I mean, it's like a whole fleet of them. You know what I'm saying? It's ridiculous. And then you see things like this. It just really, in my opinion, should raise an alarm with more people. I'm shocked it doesn't. The militarization now of the IRS since 2020 is truly alarming. In fact, there's a representative, Stephanie Bice. She wrote a letter citing a report. The IRS has now spent over $35 million on weapons and gear since 2006, and over $10 million of that over the past 3 years on military type weapons and gear. In fact, it turns out that the IRS, I should say this, the law enforcement of federal agents with arrest and firearm authority now is actually in excess of the U.S. Marines. Now, we have more federal agents with arrest and firearm authority in the U.S. government, civil servants, quote unquote, that have arrest and firearm authority than the Marines. There's 186,000 Marines, roughly, and there's over 200,000 civil servants or federal agents. Now, why does the IRS need $10 million or $35 million military type gear? I mean, that should raise a chill through every citizen that, I mean, that's amazing. It should raise a chill. The government has no business owning weapon systems, ammunition, explosive devices, armored vehicles, drones, UAVs, chemical weapons. Folks, that's the kind of stuff the IRS now owns. Why do they need all this stuff? They're supposed to be collect the nation's taxes. Why do they need this kind of stuff? What are they preparing for? And these are things that should be, again, very chilling. And then the fact that our government has now funded to the tune of something like $80 billion additional monies to the IRS on top of all this stuff that they've already done. In other words, increasingly weaponizing and militarizing what's supposed to be a civilian tax enforcement agency. It's a supercharging of an already weaponized IRS. And that has got to cause a sense of concern a chilling effect to any normal, rational person who, you know, thinks about this at all. And you know what's especially frustrating? I'm trying to think the word. It's infuriating, is what it really is. Is you've got so much, like I said, waste, fraud, all kinds of stuff going on with go to the top. I mean, it's all different levels. We're seeing it throughout the government, no question. But go to the top levels. There's now whistleblowers, IRS whistleblowers, and former business associates of Hunter Biden, and etc., and the Biden family, talking about receiving tens of millions of dollars from foreign governments and agencies and companies and such like that. And even just recently, Hunter Biden testified in court. The judge asked him, did you know that you were supposed to pay taxes on this money that you earned? And he said yes, and she asked if he did, and he said no. Yet Biden goes around constantly saying, pay your fair share. Well, they're not. In other words, leadership makes a difference. It matters. They're making millions and millions of dollars, frankly, fraudulently. The more and more evidence comes out, it's just flat out illegal. Bribery and influence peddling and everything else that's going on out there. And on top of all that, they're not paying their taxes on it either, yet they want us to. It's leadership matters. And it's that kind of attitude, that kind of approach that is going to continue to infuriate more and more people and frustrate more and more people and cause the fabric of our society to deteriorate further. We need a true leader. We need a change. And I mean a real change where somebody actually steps up and says, hey, I'm going to do the right thing and lead by example rather than lead by fraud, scams, whatever. You know what I'm saying? And just looking out for themselves rather than looking out for the best interest of all of this. If you're leading a country, you should lead the country in a better direction, not just look out for yourself and your family. I'm as much for family as anyone. I'm a family guy as much as anybody, but not to the detriment of others. I don't want to take advantage of situations or opportunities I have and have it be detrimental to my country or other people. As I talked about in the last show, faith, family, country, those are important things. Those are higher ideals to aspire to. And those are actually ideals to live a better life and to be happier and have more sense of satisfaction. I know I've seen studies where, I'm in the financial industry, and I've seen studies where, more and more people think that the highest thing to accomplish, one of the most important things in life is to make more money. Frankly, I find that very sad. I'm in the financial industry. I focus on financial stuff on a daily basis because that's what I do for a living, and making money and having money to live on and live your life and all those kinds of things absolutely is important, and you have some of the nicer things in life. I get all that. Don't get me wrong. But to aspire to that as being one of the most important things I find very sad. I've shared this story many times on this show and with many people. I was at a retirement dinner some years ago, and this really made an impression upon me. He was an older gentleman. He'd been very successful in life as a businessman and in the financial industry, and he was getting a Lifetime Achievement Award. And one of these things he stated is, he said, look, I've been very successful in life. I've made a lot of money. I've lost a lot of money. Things have, and that was all true. But he says, when you look back on life, you come to realize there's really, truly only two things that matter that you remember. And those things that you remember are relationships and experiences. I've always said money is important, but it's by no means the only thing that's important. And I know the audience I'm listening to, and maybe some folks I'm preaching to the choir here. I get it. But money, folks, is nothing more than a tool. And what money as a tool can do is it can buy you the time to enjoy relationships and enjoy experiences. And if you're not doing those things, what are you doing it for? I mean, really, what's the purpose in your life? Is there a higher ideal? And it's never too late. I just believe that it's just truly never too late. You can teach an old dog new tricks, okay? It is possible, but if the dog's willing to learn and wants to make a change, okay? Maybe you haven't lived the best life, and maybe you've been successful in one area in life, but not so. Maybe you've been successful financially, but maybe not so much in other areas. Most likely, the areas you've succeeded in is because you've devoted time and energy to those areas to become very successful. Well, guess what? The very traits that made you successful financially, let's say, for example, could also be the very same traits that could lead you to be very successful in your relationships. Okay? Because those are more satisfying. Those types of things are far more satisfying in life than just having the latest, greatest toy. Okay? I've had nice things in my life from times. I've lived in very nice homes at different times. And, it's not the things that make you happy. Again, it's the relationships and the experiences that you get to enjoy in life. And the money you make is the tool that allows you to accomplish those things. I'm going to share some other thoughts I think that you'll find this is going to be very interesting. I talk a lot about energy and energy policy, and there's a large reason why I do, because energy has probably a bigger impact on the economy and people's individual finances and their wealth than probably any other business out there. So energy is probably the most important business or industry that exists. And there's some things I want to share with you about energy, and green energy in particular, and fossil fuels and all those others, that I think you're going to find very interesting. You don't want to miss this. So I'm going to really encourage you to stay tuned.
Stay tuned for more common sense from Ferens. For more information, contact Ferens at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferens Toth. Want more information? Contact Ferens at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Now back to the show with Ferens Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. And, I was sharing some thoughts about money and its power to be used as a tool. That money shouldn't control you, but you should control it in the last segment. If you did miss that, go to yourpersonalbank.com. You can listen to this or any of the previously recorded shows. But I think it's something that I've learned, and I was fortunate I learned it fairly early in life, that relationships and experiences truly are what's important, and money is just a tool that allows you to enjoy those things. But I want to talk about or discuss something else that I find extremely important, and that's energy. And I was listening recently to Robert Bryce, and he's written a book called The Question of Power, Electricity, and the Wealth of Nations. Robert Bryce has put out a lot of information about energy. I find it very, very intriguing, very interesting. And I find that energy, I discuss this a lot on this show because energy has so much to do with economic results, economies, individual economics, poverty, the level of poverty, for example, and things like that. And one of the things that he shared that I thought was so powerful, and he was talking about green energy in particular, and a lot of the advocates for green energy. And if you're one of those, I'm going to really encourage you to listen up for a minute and think about this. Or maybe you're on the fence, or maybe you know somebody you've had disagreements with about green energy, and you don't have maybe a good arguing point. Here's the point that Robert Bryce shared that I thought was so very powerful, and it's this. When energy prices go up, the cost of energy goes up, it hurts poor people more than anything else. So in other words, you hear a lot of these advocates out there that want, say, fossil fuel energy prices to go up so green energy can be more viable commercially. Here's the problem. When the cost of energy goes up, you're hurting poor people. Period. End of sentence. Stop. You cannot raise energy prices without hurting poor people. And I'm not just talking about poor people in the United States. I'm talking about poor people across the world. And I'm going to delve into this a bit further because this, I believe, is so important. He's so adamant about this, and I think he's right, that higher energy costs hurts poor people. So therefore, if you're for higher energy costs, that means you're against poor people. Plain and simple. There's no two ways about it. And as he even goes on and says, he even feels like it's criminal to support higher energy costs because you're hurting poor people so much. He went on explaining this further. And again, it crystallized so many ideas about understanding I had about energy and economics and all that. He was stating that about half of the world's population today still has no electricity. About half the world's population still walks around wearing hand-washed clothes. In other words, they don't have a washer. About half of the world's population still burns low-energy fuels to cook their food with, like straw and dung and things like that. Those low-energy fuels, straw and dung that they use to cook with, is predominantly women and girls who do the household chores, the cooking and the cleaning, and those low-energy fuels create a lot of pollution, a lot of indoor pollution, and studies have proven that these ladies and girls have shorter lifespans because of this indoor pollution. In other words, if they had a gas stove, they would have a longer lifespan. When you start thinking about things in those kinds of terms, you start realizing how energy equals life. And in fact, you start to understand the difference between first world countries and third world countries has far more to do with the availability and abundance of cheap energy versus not. He used the example of some countries where the energy grid is so bad that the grid goes down almost on a daily basis. What do people do in those countries? Well, they have generators to back up when the electric grid goes down, again, almost on a daily basis. You would do the same thing. Why? For one, when it's too hot, you still want to be able to cool the home if you have air conditioning. If it's too cold, you want to be able to heat the home. And if you say have a whole older person, he pointed this out, you're not going to turn the thermostat down or up, depending on the situation, and allow grandma to get sick or even die. Environmentalists, as they call themselves, one of their big things they discuss today is, I'll just turn the thermostat down, 3 or 4 degrees in the summer and turn your heater up, or was it? Yeah, turn your thermostat up 3 or 4 degrees in the summer and down 3 or 4 degrees in the winter. Studies have shown that if the world's population did that, for about every 3 degrees of thermostat change, about 100,000 people per year would die, mostly the elderly, because they can't regulate temperature as well. In other words, people are not going to, even though the environmentalists, quote unquote, wanting people to do this, people are not going to do it if it's going to threaten grandma's health. Environmentalism has become a religion, a cult. I've shared that before. And it's funny how the decline of religion, traditional religions like Christianity and things like that, a lot of that has been replaced now by environmentalism, things like that. Why? Well, it's really quite simple. Human beings, the way we desire to be part of something larger, something greater. I shared this a couple of weeks ago with Vivek's message where he's talking about people they want to aspire to something greater. They want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And if one thing's taken away, they're going to replace it with something else. And then sadly, a lot of particularly younger people have replaced it with environmentalism, yet not even realize the repercussions of that. Understanding that cheap, affordable, abundant energy is actually the key to lifting people out of poverty. Some other things he was sharing with I thought was quite interesting, that if a household worldwide gets up to about equivalent of roughly $5,000 annual income, That's what the point, roughly, where they get out of desperate, destitute poverty, and then they start to thinking they have the ability to maybe get a gas stove or a washer, so mom or the girls do not have to hand wash the clothes all the time or hand wash the dishes all the time, which frees up their time to do other pursuits like education. It changes people's lives. And in fact, if you go back in history just a little bit, even in our country, if you go back to maybe your parents' or grandparents' time, when electricity and washers and dryers started becoming more mainstream, if you go back and listen to those people talk, especially the mothers of the day and the young ladies, it was life-changing. It allowed them to get out of the house and allowed the freedom from being a slave to the household chores to be able to pursue other things. You know, again, about half the world's population right now as we speak does not have access to those things. Cheap, affordable, abundant energy would allow them access to that and would free their lives up. Why wouldn't you want that for them? Why would you want to hold that back from somebody like that? Why would you want them to stay destitute in abject poverty? When you start to think about it in those terms, I start to agree when Bryce is talking about it's criminal to pursue or encourage these higher energy costs and more unreliable sources of energy. But he even shared some more practical thoughts. This I thought was a great one too, particularly around green energy. Let's not argue the point about climate change. Let's say we're going to have more erratic, extreme weather. Well, if that's the case, why in the world would you want to pursue an energy policy and energy sources that are reliant on the weather, like solar and wind? That makes absolutely no logical sense. He's absolutely correct. In other words, you want to have reliable sources of energy. And by the way, some of the cleanest, most reliable sources of energy out there today are nuclear and natural gas. They're cheap, abundant, and safe. France, for example, was very wise with they produce a good portion of their energy uses through nuclear. And one of the things they did that was smart that the United States did not do is they chose one system, one style of nuclear plant, and every nuclear plant is built the same with the same control room, etc., same controls. So an engineer can work at one plant or the other and nothing changes. They can handle any of them. 3 Mile Island in New York, famously, I believe in the 70s, had a nuclear meltdown. And part of the reason is they had 2 nuclear reactors with 2 different control rooms because they were built by 2 different companies. And the engineers, some of the failure was caused because the engineers were not familiar with the system because they were familiar with one but not the other. That's just stupid, folks. I'm sorry. That's just not smart. We need to be smarter about this. And also, I've stated this all along, and the good news is on energy is more and more countries are coming to the realization, Japan, Finland, Sweden, some of the others, that energy is about security. Energy security is about national security. You have to have energy to protect yourself and produce energy for your citizens. It's a national security issue, folks. It makes you economically weak when you don't have good, reliable, cheap sources of energy. So the next time you talk to somebody who supports green energy and wants to who wants to pursue all these things, so you can ask them a simple question. Higher energy costs hurt poor people the most. Are you against poor people? Because if you support higher energy costs, that means you are against poor people, plain and simple. End of story. I thought that was powerful. I love sharing some of those thoughts because economics make a difference. Economic freedom, I share this all the time on my show. Economic freedom is freedom. If somebody's in abject poverty and you help them through cheap energy take the next step up, you start to give them some freedom. Economic freedom is freedom. It's in our Bill of Rights. It's in the Declaration of Independence. It's what this country is founded upon. the solution for these foolish, out of touch policies is education. We need to educate more people, help more people understand. And again, the last thing I share with us all the time is we do not have to educate everyone. I get it. Some people are absolute fanatics. They've joined the cult. They won't listen to any sort of reason or logic or science for that matter. That's okay. We only need 51%. We don't need everyone. So that's a thought, a encouraging thought for you. I'm going to share another thing about climate in the next segment that I think you're going to find extremely interesting and ridiculous. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned for more common sense from Ference. For more information, contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth. Want more information? Contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. Now back to the show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. This is Ference, and I've just been sharing some thoughts today that, just help you not, like I say, cut through the noise, not be propagandized so much. Think about things, think through them, why they are the way they are. And if you missed some of the, I shared, I think one of the most important and interesting discussions about energy and the economics of it and how it impacts people in their personal economics that I've shared in a very long time. If you missed it, go to yourpersonalbank.com. You can listen to this or any of the previously recorded shows. I always encourage you to do that anytime. The other thing aside I want to say before I get into my last topic is I really appreciate the feedback I've been receiving lately. There's been maybe it's some of the topics I've been covering and thoughts I've been covering has been especially poignant for people, and it's just really kind of hit home. I think that's part of it. And some of you more, the shows, like I said, gone national. A number of stations around the country, and so more and more people are tuning in, and I really appreciate it because. Again, my goal here is to help people understand their money, how money operates, how it affects their lives, like economics, fiscal literacy. Those things are just super important and really lacking in this country, especially education-wise, and just to help people really think and understand why things are the way they are. And I help people, maximize the returns on their money and control their money and all those kinds of things. And not just do the normal same thing that everyone else does, nothing against it, but stocks, bonds, mutual funds, diversify, and, cross your fingers and hope it all works out. That might work for some, but that doesn't work for everyone. And there are other ways to grow wealth and have more control of your future. And I just try to share those and help people do better. I get asked that all the time. What do you do? I do a lot of things. I really do a lot of things. I was sharing the QLACs in the first segment. I help people with the personal bank concept. I help them think like bankers, invest like a bank, reduce their taxes, have more return on their money. I do all those kinds of things. But it's really, it's not a cut and paste cookie cutter kind of thing. Anyone who's talked to me knows I'll share with some basics with them, but then as I start to ask them questions about what they want, what do you want? Those are some of the things I ask all the time. What's your goals? What would you like to see your money do for you? How would you like to live your life? And I actually really listen. And if I can help you get there or help you get there faster, I'll share with you some ways that I think you can accomplish that. And sometimes it involves some products that I can provide and offer, and sometimes it doesn't. It just depends on the situation. But I think you'll find most people do. So when they do contact me, they find it invariably, let's just put it this way, probably at least 80-90% of the time, I'll receive the comment after our conversation that, wow, I'm really glad I called you. I'm really glad we talked. I'm really glad we met. Those are the comments I receive on a consistent, regular basis. I mean, that's why I do what I do, to improve people's lives, obviously in the financial area, but other areas too, but that's the primary focus. Now, I wanted to touch on one thing that's always seems like lately had to share something, a ridiculous idea. Well, here's the ridiculous idea of this week. So Hillary Clinton, who is a great source of ridiculous ideas, in my opinion, put out a tweet recently talking about the recent heat wave in the U.S. And she said you can thank MAGA Republicans for the recent summer wave. And as she stated, hot enough for you, thank a MAGA Republican, or better yet, vote him out of office. Well, that is absolutely just completely and totally ridiculous. And by the way, it's just another example of many Democrats, most of them, not being able to think for themselves in any way possible, okay? Because she put the tweet out about 8 days after one of the Democratic think tanks or whatever put out a message to Democrats stating, hey, politicize the hot weather. Let's use this as a tool, okay? Come on, man. Without, they're talking about the climate, they're blaming the hot weather on climate change. Well, I guess that could be true if you forget that this isn't the hottest weather we've had. In fact, records were broken in 1925, 1930s, 1950s, 1980, 85, 90, 95, 2012, and 2020. In other words, all of those years, had hotter weather than we've had this summer. Yes, it's been hot. Yes, it's hotter than normal. But guess what, folks? It's called summer. It happens, okay? And it's ironic. It's frustrating. You have the New York Times. There was a New York Times editorial. We're calling on leaders to politicize the weather. You just got to have a little bit of memory. You got to actually think a little bit, and you actually have to pay attention a little bit. In fact, the Department of what was it? It's the Department of Atmospheric Science or whatever it was. I'll find it here shortly. Put out there that this is normal. This is nothing out of outside of the statistical norm of summers. Yes, this is a hotter than average summer for a longer period than average, but nothing out of the statistical norm. These are even the government agencies are talking about, and if you look at even their own reports and their own histories, and even in recent history, this is not outside of the statistical norm, okay? But yet the Democrats have to politicize it. Yeah, here it is. It's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration noted that the heat waves aren't new, and this is within statistical norms. They always talk about being the party of following the science. They follow the science when it's convenient and will support their narrative. But when it doesn't, well, ignore the science, right? We just want to do it accordingly. And then I saw a thing here. Another thing was a geological time scale talking about concentration of CO2 and temperature fluctuations for the last 500 million years. This is actual scientific studies that have been done to determine what the average temperatures and CO2 levels were. And interestingly, if you look at this chart over the last 500 years, we're actually in one of the coolest periods according to the scientific record in the last 500 million years. What was it? This last summer, I was in the Denver area, and we were at the Natural History Museum of Denver. And, Denver is not known as a conservative hotbed, obviously, but I was in the museum, and they were showing different parts of the country, showing that for example, in the last ice age, New York and Seattle, they were pointing out had about 2 miles of ice. That's climate change. They also pointed out that at the time of the last dinosaurs, that pretty much the entire continental United States was a tropical forest. Now, I don't know about you, the last time I looked, Denver certainly is not a tropical forest today, but they were pointing out how it was, and in fact, it's a little hard to argue with because we took a trail out a few days later, and, it was pretty cool because on the trail they had, dinosaur bones in the walls. You could see them. It was very clear. It was really cool. But there was also amongst those a significant amount of fern fossils of fern plants. And they were very detailed. It was very impressive, actually. And I don't know about you, but if you know anything about plants, you understand that ferns don't grow in cold climates. In fact, these are tropical ferns, I should say. They were tropical ferns, obviously, grew in tropical climates. Further backing up, the Denver Natural Science Museum, stating that during the time of the last dinosaurs, the majority of the American continental U.S. was a tropical forest. Obviously, it was much warmer than it is today. So, again, these climate activists who try to use these scare tactics, and that's really all they are, trying to create these crises to get, in essence, to gain more power. They want you to give them more, create a crisis so you'll give them more power. That's really what it boils down to. Like I always say, follow the money. You'll probably figure out why something is the way it is, right? It's either about power or money, and power leads to money, typically, right? So the point is, they're trying to create these crises, trying to create this hysteria, trying to say that this recent spat of hot weather, I'm not going to say it hasn't been hot, but trying to blame it on, make it political so they can gain some sort of benefit or power from it, frankly, is misleading and disgusting. And the good news is, more and more people, again, it's education. It's people that are waking up and realizing, you know what? I remember it being hot a couple years ago. That doesn't mean it has anything to do with politics. Doesn't mean the government needs to do anything about it. It's just freaking hot, okay? And it's been hotter before, and it's been cooler before, and that's called weather. The joke I've always said is climate change. Yeah, it's called weather. And more people are coming to realize that. The other thing, I was talking about in the last segment, last thing with Bryce that I wanted to share was he was pointing out, CO2 levels, like he said, he's not too concerned about. But if the entire Western world went to CO2 levels at zero, it would be within the statistical error of total CO2 level emissions in the world. Because you got places like China putting on a coal plant, 100 coal plants a year. And some of the biggest increases of CO2 emissions are coming from Indonesia. So we could go to zero. It would make no statistical difference. Yet we're tying ourselves in knots, killing ourselves economically to create something that's going to create no statistical difference, will make a few people wealthy and cause a lot of economic pain and hurt for a whole lot of people. And that's where I get frustrated and irritated, and that's where it makes me mad. And my hope is more and more people wake up to this reality and educate themselves and say, you know what? You're wrong. You're an idiot. I'm not going to listen to you anymore, and vote them out of office and get rid of them and just stop listening to these people. Because it truly is. It's like Peter crying wolf. It's enough already. They keep crying wolf. They keep crying wolf. And eventually people just got to stop listening to them because they're just lying. So the last thing I want to finish off with, this last minute or so I've got, is I started the show off with a new product called the QLAC, Qualified Longevity Annuity Contract. If you missed the first segment, I'm going to encourage you to contact me at yourpersonalbank.com. You can get some more information on that, or I'll be happy to send that to you. But for anyone who has a significant IRA or 401k, and you want to reduce your required minimum distributions, therefore reducing your amount of income tax you have to pay, and also guarantee some lifetime income, which would then allow you to be more aggressive with your other investments, you can do all that. So you can get some tax reduction, get some special tax treatment, guarantee an income, increase your investment returns on other assets because you can afford to be more aggressive if you want to be. Contact me. Again, it's for anyone with a significant IRA or 401k. Reduce your overall income tax liability. It's a relatively new product that's been approved by the IRS and the Treasury Department. Contact me at yourpersonalbank.com. I'll send you more information on it. And if you want to chat about it further or have any questions, please let me know. And as always, stay tuned to the Your Personal Bank Show for more great information next week. And as long as it's still on our money, in God we trust.
Listen Tuesdays at noon and Saturdays at 1 to the Your Personal Bank Show for more information. Contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. That's 866-268-4422. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guests of this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required. Some products discussed may have limitations and not be available in all states. Excessive unpaid loans may affect performance. Distributions may become taxable if not managed properly. Replacements may not be suitable for everyone. There may be charges when replacing coverage. Dividend rates and bank line of credit rates may change. For current rates, contact Ference at 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com. Again, that's 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com.